writing some of those parts were very emotional, and nearly always I'd be in tears trying to get it down. And I have a day or two a week where I end up in Brizzy, so I catch the train, and I would just write on the train. And I remember sitting in a seat, one of those four seats, two seats that face each other, and there's three other people sitting there, and I'm typing away on my laptop and just crying, but still kept typing. And I'm sure the other people were wondering what the hell was going on, but um, it was really important for me to just get it out. But and then I would cry again later when I read it back and edit it, and I still sort of cry a bit when I read some of that. And overall, for me, that was quite cathartic because the more I sort of could get out, the better ultimately I felt.
Welcome to Ignite and Write, where we uncover powerful stories and meet the people courageous enough to tell them. I'm your host, ghostwriter, and author mentor, Roxanne McCarty-O'Kane. In this space, we shine a light on writers from all walks of life. Each episode offers honest conversations designed to inspire, educate, and remind us that every story has the potential to create connection and transformation. Because here at Ignite and Write, we believe stories don't just fill pages, they change lives. Today we are joined by Matthew Horder, a Queensland-based author, community leader, and senior administrator whose life has been shaped by both deep personal loss and an unwavering commitment to public good. With more than 2 decades of experience in senior leadership roles, Matthew has played a key role in delivering major community and sport infrastructure projects, ensuring the long-term realisation of benefits for the people of Queensland. He holds a degree in leisure management and a diploma in project management, and is known for his integrity, empathy, and ability to lead complex teams through high-pressure environments. Beyond his professional work, Matthew is deeply involved in community life. He has served in various roles across 15 years at the Mooloolaba Surf Lifesaving Club, including as president, vice president, junior activities chair, age manager, and patrol captain, and continues to support fundraising and remembrance events. After losing his parents aboard Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 in 2014, Matthew has become a powerful advocate for justice, and his debut memoir, The Day the Sky Fell, is leading into a career of him being a sought-after speaker, sharing insights on leadership, grief, resilience, accountability, and the importance of community. His book is already having a ripple effect around the world, which is really exciting to see. So thank you so much for coming along today, Matt. We are so excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Roxy, for that intro. And yeah, it's awesome that I can come along. I'm actually really happy that I'm here today. So it's good. Yep.
Excellent. All right. And you just touched on briefly before that it's actually been almost a domino effect or a ripple effect that led you to where you are right now, in that it was attending a friend's book launch that inspired your desire to write your book. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do credit Leah a lot for that. And I think for me though, I did often say I should write stuff down or put this stuff in a book. Right from the beginning, and for those who don't really know the story, mum and dad passed away in 2014, and so when we had to do a whole range of, I guess, different things that we normally wouldn't have to do, I did have this inkling that I needed to capture it and write it down and keep a record of it, but never really did anything about it. And then it wasn't until I went to Leah's book launch, and I'd known Leah through some of the fundraising that we'd done, and she and her husband at the time supported some of the music events that we did, and so I went to her book launch, and I was a little bit blown away at what she'd been able to achieve. Um, but I could see what she'd done with the support of people like Roxy and others, and that really sort of kick-started me, ignited me, if you like, to sort of get into my own writing journey. And I ended up attending one of Roxy's workshops, which got me started. And so it really sort of was that connection to someone else who'd been through something similar, I guess, in that writing context.
Yeah, absolutely. And by Leah, Matt's talking about Leah Polworth, who is the author of Letters to Billy. Now, your memoir, Matt, really begins with the moment that changed your life forever. And you touched on that very, very lightly then with saying your parents passed away in 2014. But can you share more about the journey you've been through and the inspiration for your book, The Day the Sky Fell?
Yeah. So they so in 2014, Mum and Dad were traveling back from Europe. They were on flight MH17. So that was the flight that was shot down over eastern Ukraine by Russian-backed separatists. And it's one of those moments that even now when I sort of talk about it, even just before when I sort of said Mum and Dad passed away, I still sort of gloss over exactly what happens, but that's what happened. And the book, the opening chapter, is all about that day that we found out that Mum and Dad's plane had been shot down and they'd been killed, and set us on a journey over the last sort of 10, 11, 12 years of sort of dealing with that and processing it all. And it's just one of those moments that I still look back and I still talk about this, and it's something that happens to other people and you sort of don't really sort of fully gather what's going on um, until you sort of step back and start looking at it a little bit. And so I do. The book opens with that. The first chapter is very much that first day, what happened, the things that I did. It's very raw and emotional. It wasn't easy to write, but I think for me it was very important to write about it. And then I start to sort of go back a little bit about um, just very briefly, but some of our family history, how Mum and Dad met, and um, how their lives progressed. They had us as kids, so I'm one of three brothers. I'm the eldest of three boys, and how our upbringing, you know, really shaped us to do and deal with what we dealt with. And how, I guess, privileged we were with our upbringing. We were very lucky. We weren't, and when I say privileged, we weren't wealthy or anything like that, but we certainly had a good family home with, lots of love, meals on the table, all that sort of stuff. Never went without. And for me, I really started to reflect on all of that as part of my writing, and it sort of shaped that story a little bit. That um, there were many things throughout my childhood and our lives that we did or that happened to us that got us in some ways ready for what happened to Mum and Dad, and that we were able to then um, you know, process it and deal with it a little bit. That don't really like using that word, but we were able to sort of get on with the job of what we had to do. And some of that was really quite not what you'd normally expect when someone passes away or a parent passes away. We were dealing with politicians. I had the Prime Minister ringing me, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Governor General. Media were contacting us. It was quite intense for a long time, and that whole process early on was filled with a lot of doubt. We still didn't have any real understanding of where Mum and Dad were. We knew they were shot down, but their bodies may or may not have been collected. There was a whole victim identification and repatriation process that we still had to go through. So it was a really difficult journey, but like I sort of said it as I reflected on it all, in many ways we were prepared inadvertently for it. So yeah.
Yeah,
But
thank you. And was that reflection, do you think, only made possible because you decided to write the book, or had you had time before even having that seed planted where you thought, you could connect those dots, if you like?
yeah, so look, I think definitely it was made possible because I wrote the book. Um, the story hadn't changed, but the way I sort of wrote it probably changed. And that's a very important sort of thing to sort of say throughout the process. And Roxy, I know because she was part of it, but out of that early workshop, and we sort of do our mind map, and you come up with your different themes, and you sort of end up with basic chapters with subheadings. All of that's still in my book, but from what that very first sort of list of topics and chapter headings was to what it is now is very different. And it got shaped quite a lot from that starting process. And again, I kind of probably didn't even realize at the time what we were doing, but that's what we were doing, was sort of putting it in a better order, but also me connecting some of those dots a little bit better. So the bits were there, but it just, it made me realize what we'd done. And if I give an example, so in 1982, when I was 7 years old, I had open heart surgery. So mum and dad sort of had put me through that, and it's not something that you gloss over, but it's certainly not something you talk about a little bit. So it it definitely um, was a topic and a part of my story. I sort of had that down from the get go, that these are the sort of things that we did. But it wasn't until I wrote the book I realised what mum and dad had actually done for me in supporting me through that surgery, but also what it meant for my own resilience and capacity and ability to sort of cope with major trauma and change. It was just something I did at the time, but it was one piece of preparing me for something that was, going to be a lot harder and a lot more traumatic. And so that's how the story starts to sort of shape a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, a story like this and an experience that you went through with something on such a global scale, did you find it hard to, I guess, find the line between what to include, what not to include, making sure, like you said, that you built up a real picture of your parents as humans rather than just a number as what's reported largely in the media, especially the global media. 200 over 200 passengers, and your book, I think some of the feedback you've been getting early on, which is really exciting, is that people get to know your parents through reading this book, and it really makes it more impactful and more
Yeah.
real, almost humanizing the tragedy a little bit.
Yeah. I use that word a lot, humanizing the tragedy, but it was very important for me to sort of stay true to what my story was, or our family story was, particularly my story. Um, so the incident itself is very publicly reported, very well documented. You can Google it. You can find many things. You can find other books about MH17, and it'll be stuff around the investigation or what happened or what theories and whatever else, but never really about the people who were on board and the impact that it had on those families. So whilst we're part of that broader global story, I really wanted to capture what it meant for me to be dealing with that the way we had to deal with it. So I do talk about you know what happened, the criminal trial, walking through the reconstructed aircraft, doing all those things that are very publicly available. But what did it mean to me, and what was the impact on me, and what was the impact on our family, and how does that relate to mum and dad? And um, you know, this isn't. It also touches on what mum and dad were really like, because this isn't really their story. It's how it ended, but they weren't just a number on that flight. They did all these other wonderful things as well, and those things have never really been publicly presented. I guess it wasn't really about that, but in terms of having that history and that record for my kids and my family and everyone else, I really wanted to sort of them to see that this is who mum and dad were, not what the tabloid says or the media says or a courtroom says. Um, and so that's kind of how it started, really. And probably sort of going into another little area here, but when I first started writing the book, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to publish it or not. I really just wanted to capture the story. And as we went through, I've decided to publish it, and here we are. We've got a published book. Like there's a copy right here if you need to see it. But the it was never it was the start was never about that. It was just about getting my story down. And I think I was probably always thought I might publish it, but I was probably encouraged a little bit by people like Roxy and Candace and a couple of others who read my story and thought it was pretty good. So if I can say it like that, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
We encourage people to celebrate their awesomeness, so you can
yeah.
absolutely do that. Yeah, excellent. And yeah, so that's obviously with everything and how it unfolded, you'll be able to read more about it in the pages of the books to get the full rundown of it. But obviously, your grieving process was very much, you had to find that balance between getting privacy for the family and satiating the appetite of journalists and media and all that other stuff, and also the ongoing investigations and trials that dragged on for several years. When it came time to writing this, your amazing book, how did you manage tackling the tougher parts of the book, the more emotional and heavier parts?
Yeah. In terms of how did I manage it? It's sometimes I think not very well is probably the answer. Um, but I've certainly, and I sort of touch in the book a bit about my resilience and tenacity and um, the way I've perhaps looked after myself and approached a few things. So I very much put myself first a lot when I'm doing these things, and so writing some of those parts were very emotional, and nearly always I'd be in tears trying to get it down. Um, I remember one time, I mean, as part of the intro, Roxy sort of mentioned I work, so I do work full time, and I do have a whole heap of other commitments. So the writing often was being fit in around all of that, which was another layer. But I'd often I have a day or two a week where I end up in Brizzy, so I catch the train, and I would just write on the train. And I remember sitting in a seat, one of those four seats, two seats that face each other, and there's three other people sitting there, and I'm typing away on my laptop and just crying, but still kept typing. And I'm sure the other people were wondering what the hell was going on, but um, it was really important for me to just get it out. But and then I would cry again later when I read it back and edit it, and I still sort of cry a bit when I read some of those sections. Um, but in terms of how I managed it personally, I would prefer to do it like that during the day. I would never do it at night because I found that too unsettling before trying to go to sleep and whatever else. I just managed that a little bit. It was for me, exercise and movement's very important. So if I needed to, I'd get up and go and do something. Um, I start my day like that every day anyway. I've done the same again today, been up and done something. Um, so I manage those sort of things personally really, really well. Um, and then in terms of the story and what I wrote and some of those emotional bits, I would send them to both my brothers live in Melbourne, but I'd send it to my brothers and I'd get their feedback and I'd go, look, this is my memory of it all. And then, they'd validate or otherwise how I felt. And it was just another way of doing it. And overall for me, that was quite cathartic because the more I sort of could get out, the better ultimately I felt. Um, and then I was also able to sort of look at it again later with a fresh sort of clearer head and just make sure that what I was saying I was happy to make public rather than not. Very careful not to um, portion blame and do things like that. It's really about telling our story and how we felt.
Yeah, excellent. My gosh, I'm just picturing you on the train like that. That takes some courage to not only to do that in, in the privacy of your own home, but then to be so vulnerable when you're in a public space as well. That shows real dedication to getting the story out, which is incredible. So thank you for sharing that with us. You did hold up a copy of your book cover before, and I would love for you to share, I guess, your thought process behind choosing to go with the assisted publishing route rather than seeking a traditional publisher, because laying all the cards on the table with a story, with a subject matter as global as yours, you could have approached publishers and had some good inroads there. But what was your thinking behind choosing to go the self or the assisted publishing route and keeping that control for yourself?
So it's a good question. I think I'll go back initially to probably something I said earlier, where it was never really about publishing the book. So I kind of never went into it with a mindset that, oh, I'm going to get it published and someone's going to publish it for me, and it's going to be great and everyone's going to love it. So it was kind of never really about that. But when I did sort of get through to a stage where I thought, okay, yeah, I am going to publish it, I I I really just wanted it to be my work and something that I could do. And I mean, when I say mine, it was assisted and supported through the process, but it was definitely me having control over that whole process, and then also owning my work at the end of it. Um, and at the end of the day, those two things were more important to me than anything else. And so I'm really comfortable that I've gone down this path. I did, briefly look at alternative models, but just not something that I wanted to do. And in many ways, I'm very fortunate, as you all are, that we've got people like Roxy, and there's others as well, but who can help us with this process. And I think there's a few points there, and I don't know where you're at with your different writing processes, but I remember initially thinking, oh, look, I don't know if I really want to publish it because I'm going to have to print 10,000 copies and have boxes of stuff that I'm never going to be able to get rid of. Um, but as I sort of went through this process and using the printing company that we use, it made me realize that you don't need to do that. You can literally print one copy and you're done. Um, so some of the, I guess, barriers that I might have put in front of myself disappeared as well, and it made it really easy to sort of then just choose to sort of go down this path. But ultimately, I wanted to have that control and ownership over my stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. And I would love to come back to that cover again. I'd love you to share the story of how the cover designs evolve, because you were one of those authors, and most most authors are, that say, I'm never putting myself on the cover. And then we end up with this beautiful cover with Matt not quite front and center, but taking up a fair portion of the front. Would you like to share the evolution of the cover design process, because that's a big decision maker for a lot of authors who choose that path, is picking what it's going to look like on the shelf.
Yeah, and it's a good it's a good story, I think. Um, so with the design process, I did work with Roxy and we worked with Sylvie to do the internal design and external design of the book. And I think probably to be fair, right through the whole process, the whole writing process, even the editing and structural review and everything that we did, I'm going to say I was a reasonably easy client. I
I
didn't
can attest to that. Yeah.
I didn't sort of challenge too many things. I took on board, the majority of the feedback. I still stuck to a few things that were important to me, um, but yeah, I was very easy client. And with the front cover and the back cover, we did a design brief and we worked through some options that might look good on a design brief, and um, sent it off over to Sylvie, and I got 4 options back. And probably for the first time in the whole process, I became the client that wasn't that easy to deal with. I didn't like any of them. And
No. It's so important though.
and
It's so
and
important to feel aligned and excited about it. So yeah, that it's all part of
and
the creative process.
that's right. I'm not it's not a criticism of any person, but it's still, this is part of me needing to con control it, right? So,
Yeah, 100%.
and so I got these covers back and I went, oh, I don't really like these. I sent them to my brothers and I just said, look, I didn't sort of say anything other than, look, can you just have a look at these and tell me what you think? Because I'm not sure. Anyway, they didn't like them either. Um, and they were good covers, but just not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Um, and my sister-in-law actually, without me sort of asking, did about 9 different book covers for me. Um, and one of them was the one that's on the book. Um, and she had included the photo of me on the front cover, which was not part of my original design brief, so I didn't ask for that. Um, because I didn't think I wanted to be on the front cover. And but when the cover came back, and essentially it's what she designed, um, I went, oh, I actually don't. I like that. I don't mind that. And we tweaked it a little bit, and it sort of got the tear down the page. And the other image there is from Ukraine. There's a smokestack there that is the actual aircraft burning out after it crashed. So it's because I didn't want the plane on the front cover either.
Mm.
Even though I was happy to look at an option for that. Inadvertently, we've got the plane on the front cover, Roxy. It's just probably not how you thought it might have
Yeah,
been.
no, that's right.
And and so we sort of worked on that and we went with that, and I'm really happy with the cover. I've had great feedback, and in hindsight, I look at that and I go, well, look, Natalie is her name, my sister-in-law, and she knows me, she knows my family, she's been through the whole process myself. It kind of made sense that she was able to interpret the story a little bit, and what it meant to us, and that's how we ended up, with the cover that we've got. And I sent it back to Roxy and I said, look, this is sort of what I'm thinking. Um, and then, Roxy and Sylvia are great. They worked it in with the rest of the cover and got all the rest of the design right with the fonts and whatever else, so that it fits in with the spine and the back. And we took my author photo off the back cover, which I think neatened up the back cover as well, because I'm on the front, and it works quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great indicator of like I am a words person and not so much a visual person. And I know a lot of authors are that sometimes you don't know, like you think you know what you want, but then until you physically see it, you like for you, we talked about all these amazing components, and then when you saw it, you were immediately like, no, this is not it. But then as soon as you saw Natalie's one, you were like, that's it. So that's why it's really great, yeah, to speak up, to be engaged in the process, because that way you end up with something that you really love at the end. And I'd love for you to share that moment where you got to receive your test print and actually see your first physical book for the first time.
Yeah, so I did. I don't know if I ever sent it to you. I did record a video of it,
Yeah, you did.
but oh look, it was very exciting. I think it for me, for the most part, all my writing was just done on my laptop. A lot of my feedback was done on a laptop. I didn't really print anything out and edit it. It was all done electronically. And so I kind of knew what it was. I knew what it looked like in that form. So for when it turned up into the mail and I opened that package, it was like this little project had just sort of come to life, literally, like in a moment. It was very it was tangible, something you could hold, you could pick it up, flick through the pages, and um, real immense satisfaction at that stage. But yeah, it was like this little project had just sort of come to life, and it had been born, and it was 18 months of work, and then in a moment it was like, oh, and now I've got boxes of them, but it's yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. No, that's awesome. And I know a lot of people have questions around launches. That's a whole thing in and of itself. So I'd love for you to share, what it was that you created for your book launch and how you put your personal touch on it.
Yeah. It was probably the best book launch I've ever done. It's
Yeah,
also the only book launch I've ever done.
yeah.
Um, so look, I think, to be honest, I hadn't been to too many book launches. I've been to Leah's, and um, I went along to the um, Inspiring Women launch, just to sort of support a couple of people there. But I was also paying a lot of attention to the launch itself. Um, and I think in my head I knew what I wanted to do. So I wanted it to be relaxed. I wanted it to be, um, a real celebration of what I'd done. Launching the book, it's a pretty tough subject matter when you sort of really break it down. So it could be a really down and sad sort of experience if you're not too careful about it. And so I really wanted it to be at Mooloolaba. Um, that was really important because Mum and Dad's ashes are at Mooloolaba, and obviously I've got a connection there with some of the work I've done with the surf club and whatever else. So I booked it in at the surf club. It was a breakfast brunch celebration. So initially I thought I might do a lunch, but I think the format for me worked quite well.
Mm.
The weather on that day was amazing, which helps because it's a spectacular location when it's good. Um, and really the other part for me was that I wanted to feature in the launch. Obviously, I am featuring myself anyway with the book launch, but I was a big part of the actual program and proceedings. And I had in my head that I'd have 3 or 4 guests, and I ended up with 3. Roxy was one of them. I had Peter Crozier, who works for the Australian Federal Police. He's an assistant commissioner there. He led the MH17 investigation for Australia. And another guy by the name of Mark Forbes, who I do a bit of work with locally with a charity, and there was a connection there around the sunflowers, and I didn't just want these people to sort of come up and talk and speak or have a speech. It was very conversational, and I sat on the stage with them, and I interviewed each other. It wasn't really formal, but it was a conversational interview about our process and real celebration of what we'd achieved and what we'd done. And I actually think it worked really, really well. I'm extremely happy with how it went. The and then when I launched the book, I actually wrote a little poem and tried to read it out, and we launched it at the end, which also kind of worked. Um, the and now I'm a writer. I have to say I'm a writer now because I used to say I'm not a writer, but I'm
Well,
a
you
writer.
actually said it on the launch day, and I'm like, you can't say that anymore. There's a literal book
Yeah,
right here.
I told everyone I'm a C grade English student. So this is if anyone's got kids at home that are struggling at English, then that's what a C grade student can do. So there's no excuses. But
And the other thing too was that you put all this together, and always the humble person, you're like, oh, I don't know if we're going to fill up the room.
yeah,
Tell everyone what happened.
yeah, I was yeah. Sorry, I was going to probably say something about that, but um, yeah. Look, I've always had a lot of support, but I really didn't think um, I would fill that room. Um, Although when I booked it in, I told the club, I said, "Yeah, yeah, don't worry, I'll get 100 people," and they were sort of looking at me, smirking, going, "No, he'll never get 100 people." Um, and the we put it together with Roxy's help, using Humanitics. Great little platform actually for this sort of event. Um, Put it together, and I thought, all right, it's time to get it out there. Um, and I did a social media post on my Facebook page, and then a similar one on my LinkedIn page. And within 3 days, it was sold out. I was ringing the venue, trying to get more seats. I managed to get a little bit more in. I had a waiting list. So there was 120 people there that, paid to come and look at my book launch. And I think that was the thing that I was concerned about is, people do support me, but it was $55 to come to the book launch. I mean, it got breakfast and that didn't include a book, $90 with a book. And people snapped them up and took them, and including Roxy, she jumped in and grabbed a table. Um, and it was very humbling. And I remember putting that out that night. And the first person to buy a ticket, I don't know if I told you this, Roxy, but the first person to buy a ticket on through that Humanitics site was Matt Stewart, who was my MC for the day.
Mhm.
He wasn't down as my MC until much later because I had a couple of other options. He was third choice, but that's okay. Um, and the second, and when I say first person to buy it, I literally hit send, and I think by the time I'd finished sending it on LinkedIn, he'd bought a ticket, and I was beaming. I was like, "Oh, someone's bought a ticket." And I had, just for a little bit of context, I had, and I might circle back on something here, but I had a couple of options for sort of sponsorship tables. So there was a gold sponsorship, which Roxy took, and a platinum sponsorship. And so about 5 minutes after Matt bought his ticket, Remy from RM Capital, he bought the platinum table. So I'd sold it, within 5 minutes. I thought, oh, geez, probably should be selling more than this, or I need a bigger room. Like straight away, I was starting to think this would work. And that included, his platinum sponsorship includes a speaking opportunity with his business, so which I'm actually doing today at lunch. So I'm doing a business lunch
Oh,
today. Um,
oh, we got you in just in time.
so it sort of really vindicated some of my thinking because I'd sort of put a bit of thought into that ticket structure. Um, but I really wasn't sure if I would get there. Part of what I want to do out of this is a little bit of corporate speaking and business sort of opportunities. So that was why that platinum package was structured in the way that it was. And I'm getting to do that today. It's also another reason why I structured the book launch the way I did, where I was a feature of each session and played a role in that speaking role. And yeah, I was quite comfortable, I think, on the stage that day, so it was good.
Excellent. No, that's so exciting. And, we talk about using your book as a pillar. That's a prime example, like literally building in a business opportunity into your launch. Yeah, just a stroke of genius there, Matt. Very well done.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see where that leads because this particular opportunity is going to get you into a room full of all the people who could open up doors to more opportunities. So, yeah, you'll have to keep us in the loop with how it all tracks from here.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you want to touch on it. I mean, I've done all my own sort of PR and marketing and
Yeah.
whatever else, but probably what and I don't know what everyone is thinking with their particular situation, but in terms of, I would say I've had some reasonably good success with some of my um, media exposure. And it all just comes down to utilizing the networks that I had or contacts or people that I have. So you sort of tap into something and it leads into something. And for me, I mean, I had some media contacts out of everything we went through with MH17. So I leaned on them and I just said, look, this is what I'm doing. I want you to help me promote my book. Like, is almost as simple as that. Um, and a big one was the Australian newspaper. So I've got a connection there with the aviation journalist there. And so she writes a lot about all the aviation incidents and whatever else around the world. So I reached out to her, Robin Ironside, her name is, and I said, look, I've got this book. I'd like you to help me promote it. And she was happy to. And she said, I will. But a day later, she rang me back and said, look, I've been chatting to Carolyn Ovington, who's their literary editor, and she wants to run a feature and do this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I went, yeah, okay, sure, why not? And anyway, she did. And I think, Roxy, I know you saw it, but it was a full 2-page spread in the culture section of the Weekend Australian the week before the book launch. And out of that, I will say I got a lot of interest. Doesn't automatically generate sales is probably something I would say, but definitely generates a lot of interest. And um, I've managed to get, a whole heap of other radio interviews that week. I think I did 10 radio interviews across Australia. The local ones are easy enough because they'll support stuff, but there was a couple in, like 3AW in Melbourne and things like that were pretty good pickups. So for me, the challenge with, and I'll just digress slightly. I've actually probably enjoyed this part of the process more than actually writing and publishing the book. So, um, the but getting that exposure outside of Sunshine Coast and outside of Southeast Queensland is a real challenge. And so I've been able to do that a little bit. I've certainly got some national exposure and a little bit of international exposure, which MH17 will do. But I've now got people contacting me. So I recorded a podcast a couple of weeks ago called The Listening Project. So the lady from Sydney came up and recorded me, and they're doing an 8-series podcast on grief, and so I'll be one of those 8 episodes when it comes out. So I'll share that around once it's released.
Yeah, perfect.
Caroline Hutchinson, who's back at Nick's, so she's interviewing me next week for a podcast she's working on. I think it's a Sunshine Coast something. Locals of the Sunshine Coast. I probably should
Oh,
pay more
right.
attention.
Yes. So
She's
she's
reinventing.
reviving that one.
Yeah. Yep. I think the last person I interviewed was Terry Irwin, maybe. So they've had to go backwards a little bit, but
Not even.
I guess my point is, if you put it out there and you want some of this stuff, it's there. It'll be there for you, and you just sort of have to be ready for it and say yes, I guess, if that's what you want. You can always say no. But the more you sort of say yes to some of this stuff, the more it will just keep coming. And so that'll be, a good little bit of exposure. And then I've done a fair bit of reaching out. So I have reached out to all the local bookshops and that sort of stuff, Roxy, which you'd be glad to know. So I'm at the Caloundra markets this weekend.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully it doesn't rain. Oh,
You'll be
anyway,
undercover. You'll be fine.
I know. It's more that people will come. I tried for last weekend. I thought, Mother's Day would be good. I tried for Yamundi and Caloundra, but they were booked out. Um, I'm doing Yamundi in a couple of weeks' time. And then Rosetta at Mulaney's going to have me a couple of weeks after that. The bookshop in Montville's stocking my book. The post office at Pridgeon Springs is stocking it, along with the Coolum post office. So that just came about when I went in one day to work out which was the right bag for me to post my book
Yeah.
in, and they go, what's this all about? And I told them, and they said, oh, we should stock that here. And I went, okay, I've got some in the car. So it's just talking about it. The Avid Reader are stocking it. I've got stock at West End in Brizzy,
Excellent.
and the library bookshop at the State Library is going to stock it as well. So I've reached out to all of them. There's a few little things like that that help make it work. Some of that's just constant sort of follow up and work, but it's not hard.
Yeah, awesome. No, it's just great to show that persistence is the key here. So while immediate yeses are awesome, an immediate no doesn't necessarily mean a no forever. So that's a
Yeah.
great lesson to share with everyone. Persistence and follow up. So that's awesome. Now I know we're getting on in time here. So I did want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more about the sunflowers and I guess, the importance of those, not only in your story, but in the work that you do, linking up with Ended, which is a charity that supports people with eating disorders. Because from that collaboration at your launch, you actually managed to raise $1,000 through the sale of your Seeds of Hope. So I'd love for you to share more about the significance of that and how that relationship came to be.
Yeah. So it is a great story, and there is a section in the book. It's called Seeds of Hope, but the the intro, I guess, to the story is at the time. So the crash site in Ukraine was, I think it was sort of dubbed the world's largest crime scene at one stage. It's covers 50 square kilometers of ground, and large areas of that were sunflower fields in Ukraine. So sunflowers have been an important commodity for Ukraine for many, many years, and probably still are, even though they're in a sort of war-torn state at the moment. Um, and there was an Australian journalist by the name of Paul McGeoch. So he was Washington based, but he was the Sydney Morning Herald correspondent, and he spent a fair bit of time on the ground, first sort of 2 or 3 months on the ground, reporting on the case. And he and another lady by the name of Kate Garrity, who's a photographer, before they left, they grabbed three sunflower heads and took them back to the United States at that stage. And so we're talking about, like, the sunflower heads are the big ones, sort of the size of your face, and they stand up pretty tall, sort of probably higher than most of us. So they're those big European sunflowers. And anyway, he took three heads back and sort of harvested those seeds from those sunflower heads and wrote an article in the Sydney Morning Herald inviting families, Australian families, to contact him, and he would send some seeds from Ukraine, these Ukrainian sunflowers, to us. So I'd seen that story, and I wrote to him and I said, "Yep, look, we'll have some." And we sort of exchanged emails. And anyway, in the meantime, Australian Quarantine Authority sort of had also seen that news story and stepped in and said, "No, you're not going to be sending seeds to our families." But they did offer to take the seeds and grow them out in a controlled environment in a lab in Australia somewhere, test them for anything that we didn't want in Australia, obviously. And then if they were clean, they would distribute the seeds from there. So that's exactly what they did. They grew them out, they tested them, um, and they were all good. So the seeds were distributed, and I remember I ended up receiving a packet of seeds. There were 17 seeds in it. I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but because MH17, and it went down on the 17th of July, and 17 seems to be a bit of a thing. Anyway, 17 seeds came. I had a little garden bed that I had ready to use. I planted all seeds, grew them all. Most of them took And then I've been growing those sunflowers and harvesting those seeds and sort of repeating the process ever since. So we're sort of nearly 12 years on since the plane went down. And so I told this story. I did a talk at Anded Connections Cafe. So they used to have a cafe down the back of Kiwana Shopping World there. And he got me in to do a bit of a talk. Again, he sort of, even that was a little bit humbling. He said, "Oh, we do these talks, people come down," and it supported the cafe. So basically, I talk for free and people would come and listen and they'd buy coffee and food and whatever else. And that's how they made money out of it. And I said, "Sure." I sort of said, "Well, do you really want me there?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, no, you've got a story to tell." And the person he had in before me was Matt Galinsky. And I said, I'm not of that caliber." But anyway, we went in and I talked for an hour and a half, but I closed with this story and I told them exactly what I just told you guys and how I regrow the seeds and gives you hope and whatever else. Um, and they'd always have there really is their mission is, to help people with eating disorders, but they always sort of have a motto that there is hope. Um, and they've got the House of Hope out at Wombai, which is where they do a lot of their operations. And Mark grabbed me after and he said, "Look, I wouldn't mind having some of those seeds. We'll grow them at the House of Hope. They can do it as part of their programming. When their clients have finished their treatments, they can get a little packet of seeds with the story and send them on their way." So we started doing that. I went out there one day and we planted some and they've been growing them and harvesting them. Excuse me. And, that's been going on for a bit. By now, we're talking, my 17 seeds have turned into thousands of seeds. We've literally got thousands of them. And he packaged them up and he started selling them at some of their events just as part of their fundraising with my story attached to it. It got taken to the next level again. There's part of the land holding they've got out there is a community, well, not a community garden. It's a vegetable garden that's been run by Teens Take Control. And they've got a specific sunflower bed now that's in the shape of a heart, and they grow my seeds. And again, they just grow them to then either give to their clients or sell as part of the fundraising. And so I've sort of said to him, "Look, I'll sell them as part of my thing." And we told the story on the day. We had a little bit of a chat about it, and yeah, we sold out. There was 100 packets. We sold them all, and that's $1,000 that went to charity, which is great. And so I still sell those now, and those funds go to charity. And incidentally, little side story. So out of the Teens Take Control stuff, they sell some of their veggies to the chef at Makepeace Island. I don't know if you know Makepeace Island in Noosa River, owned by Richard Branson and a couple of others, but mostly Richard. Anyway, he's bought the seeds and he's growing them on Makepeace Island. So they just sort of keep going. Who knows where they'll end up? But it's a really, really nice story. And I think I messaged him after the book launch. I said, "Oh, look, we did really well. We made $1,000." And he goes, "Oh, it's not bad for selling a packets of seeds." And I went, "Well, we're not selling seed, we're selling hope." And that's what people are buying.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a good story, and there's lots of, I think that's part of my whole reflection on everything, that what's happened to us and what happened to mum and dad is horrible, but there's lots of little good things that come out of it along the way. And even a journalist who's just doing their job on the ground, still thinking about the families back home and how they might be able to help or give a little bit back. And it was really nice because we weren't able to travel to Ukraine, and we still can't travel to that part of Ukraine. It's occupied by Russian forces at the moment. So, we may never actually get to that site, but a little bit of it has sort of come to us. And so there's a deeper connection for me there as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Matt. I think everyone felt that in the feels. What a beautiful, beautiful outcome for something that you've all had to go through. So how can people find and buy your book? How can they book you for speaking opportunities going forward?
I do have a website, so it's matthewhorder.com.au. So you can purchase the book there. You can reach out to me there as well. My email address is basically the same as the website. It's info@matthewhorder.com.au. I do have stock of my book available, so that's easy to get out to people. I am available for some public speaking and corporate speaking. So, but yeah, absolutely, that's how you can get in touch with me, and that's how you can reach out. I'm more than happy to support and assist where I can, and chat where I can. The book is also available through, all those major online retail sort of outlets, and there's an ebook available too on Amazon KDP.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out with us today, for sharing so openly about all the aspects of your journey. And yeah, we wish you all the best going forward. I can't wait to see where your book ends up and what sort of positive effects you have around the world going forward.
Yeah, thank you.